Hello lovely people and welcome to today's video. I'm going to be doing a dual review today, reviewing the Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka and The Cockroach by McEwan. So I thought I'd start off with the one that I read first. I read this one back in May of last year and I gave it 4 stars. This is the Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. It is a strange short story about a man who wakes up from a nightmare to find himself utterly transformed into a bug. It was definitely a shocking and intriguing opener. It's one that definitely set the tone for the type of bizarre nature that we were going to get through this story. As I say, the tone was completely strange, unusual, bizarro in tone. It had me in the mind of the movie The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, which I always struggle to say. It was wild, but I really enjoyed that. Metamorphosis had so many interesting themes, such as the human psyche, family, the strange and unusual, and classism. But the theme that was most interesting to me, at least, was the change in circumstances, a fall from grace, so to speak, that this transformation that our main character Gregor goes through, and how it has such a vast impact on not only himself but the family. Being the only breadwinner of the family unit, the change in fortune quickly triggers Gregor's mum and dad in particular to turn to disgust, disdain, and to find him to be an absolute burden and strain on the family, without more than a flicker of a thought as to how and why this has happened, like the fantastical of it all, like what is going on, also with a lack of thought of how to revert Gregor back to humanity. It really displayed the callousness even your supposed loved ones can have when your sense of use runs out to them. The characters were all incredibly dislikable, but I really loved the exploration of various themes like the quirkiness of the magical realism, the claustrophobic telling of the story being centered really in one very cramped room, especially once Gregor has his transformation and he turns into this very large bug. He's kind of like squished in, and you can really feel that from the words that are used in the story, as well as the interesting and odd story and just the general philosophical nature of the tale. It was an absolutely surreal and thought-provoking piece. Now, when I went on to read The Cockroach, it was funny because I hadn't realised at the time that it was a reimagining and inspiration from the Metamorphosis. So Ian McEwan kind of did his own version, like a nod to, in respect I'm assuming, to Franz Kafka. So this one I gave a 3.5 stars, and I read this the September after, so literally a couple of months, and I was like, oh, have I read this before? Only then did I do some digging and realise. But yeah, this was a absolutely fabulous ode to Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis. However, here we see our newly transformed cockroach being exploring the great outdoors. So where we had the claustrophobic confinement of one room, Gregor in The Metamorphosis, here our main character is able to explore the outdoors as well as all the dangers that entails. It felt very Freaky Friday in proportions, as we got to have a glimpse inside the head of the man who just so happens to be the Prime Minister and the bug once their like consciousnesses swapped. I thought that was very like trippy vibe that we didn't get to see at all really in the Metamorphosis, so I thought that was a interesting sort of aspect to throw in and add nuance and differ from the original story, right? The direction it took was unexpected. I loved the conversation of this takeover to take charge of a failing leadership and morphing the humans' political sway to one in which the cockroaches would benefit. It's basically like an alien invasion. They're slowly taking over the brains of people in power. So it has more in terms of like actual story development and like a point to the story, if that makes sense. There's a reason to why these cockroaches are here. There's a reason to why the people are turning into cockroaches, right? With this topic, I feel like it did have a slightly deeper dynamic than the inspired piece. and it just took some of the more basic, simpler ideas that much further. It almost felt like a really dystopian manifesto. The whole satire on Trump, Boris Johnson and Brexit was so well discussed. The whole concept with the reversalists and the clockwiser parties was as baffling as it was fascinating, particularly the concept of reversing the cash flow, essentially saying you need to pay to be able to work, but to earn money you have to take a load of stuff just from the shops. It was quite a process, and McEwan definitely built like a world for this story. There was definitely more direction to this story and like a linear path, I guess you could say, even though it still had that very bizarro feel in roots. There's a Goodreads reviewer called Cecily who breaks this down far more eloquently than I'm able to, but overall The Cockroach by Ian McEwan was very interesting, mildly amusing and reflective read, but I do think it took the ideas that the Metamorphosis had and really ran with it, made it its own, made it unique, but still had that essence of the strange and unusual and bizarro feel in nature. So there we are, that is my dual review for The Metamorphosis and The Cockroach. Let me know if you have read either or both of these stories. I would love to know. Anyway, for now I shall catch you in another video soon. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.